I feel like, at this point in time, most of us know the origin story of DreamWorks. An animation studio that emerged as a counter to the ways of Disney. And interestingly enough, now more than ever, this difference in the creative approach of both studios has become a matter of public discussion, as one of DreamWorks' latest releases, The Wild Robot, has attained widespread success and overwhelmingly positive audience reception. While DreamWorks has a reputation of being inconsistent with the quality of their projects, movies like the sequel to Puss in Boots and The Wild Robot make me think that the studio has discovered a long-forgotten secret ingredient for making their audience happy, and today I want to explore what it is and how it manifests through the plot of The Wild Robot. Before we continue, I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge that wow, my last video reached a lot of you guys, and our little community of the Sketchy Chatters has grown. For all the newcomers and all who have been here for a while now, I want to say thank you so much. Your kind comments mean more to me than you can imagine. Thank you for being here, and I hope I can keep making videos that bring something positive to your life. But now, without further ado, let's dive into the mind of DreamWorks and the world of The Wild Robot. In our modern times, it is not uncommon to hear discourse about representation and its importance. And while physical representation is important, some seem to have forgotten that there's another type that I believe is more vast and universal, and that is emotional representation. I think it is no coincidence that one of the most talked about scenes from DreamWorks' recent Puss in Boots movie was none other than the anxiety scene. People related to it and appreciated how well it was handled. The scene didn't come off as oddly specific, to a point that only its creator could relate to it, neither was it unrealistic or disrespectful, and so it had that universal emotional appeal that can reach many. DreamWorks has its roots and success based in pop culture, and I do think following this same pattern, they have in recent times managed to capture people's most relevant needs, worries and feelings, and that is, I think, their secret ingredient for success. If we take a look at The Wild Robot, yeah, at first glance it is a story about a robot that is the only survivor from a shipwreck which left her on an uninhabited by humans island where, after a terrible accident, she ended up having to raise an orphan gosling with the help of a sly little fox called Fink. But upon further inspection, we can see that some of the key points that this movie addresses are the feeling of not being in charge of your life, the universal need for kindness and love, the fear of failure, and more specifically, the anxiety surrounding motherhood. So, let's first see how The Wild Robot addresses people's craving for unconditional kindness and love. Growing up, I used to hear a lot of movie critiques noting that the power of friendship is a bit of a lazy and uninspired problem-solving device in storytelling. And I do see where they're coming from. However, I think in present time, our reality has fundamentally changed what we want from the world, people, relationships, and storytelling. I have heard of the legendary YouTube censorship, and I'm not sure how it works exactly, but just for safety, I'm letting you know that now I'll talk about the event that happened 4 years ago and how I suppose it affected people. From what I've been observing, I think that this event, that shall not be named, created a reality of unease, an almost constant state of emergency that highlighted or maybe even exacerbated a specific kind of individualism and selfishness amongst us. It awoke, I suppose, a primal, animalistic instinct that trampled over kindness and selflessness in favor of securing one's own survival. And I imagine, in a time like this, where we were all isolated from one another and we constantly felt that distance between us and humanity, that heart-wrenching feeling of knowing that probably no one would prioritize you if push comes to shove. I think this is what in consequent years made people crave kindness back. The Wild Robot tells a story of a wild, ruthless, harsh society where one stranger, one being that was considered to be a frightening monster, brought kindness and empathy into the community.
We all got one chance to see next spring. Because of her. The thing. The monster. She's the one who got you out of the storm.
We have discussed in previous videos of mine how these days kindness tends to be painted as weakness, so The Wild Robot going against that notion and arguing that kindness can be a survival skill is a very refreshing and needed take. I must admit though, this message actually bugged me for a long while in the context of the story, but I think I finally decoded it. What bugged me was that the wild animals had a truce in the lodge of the robot to not eat each other while staying there, thus their kindness towards one another would help them all surviving the winter. But I was thinking, okay, so in spring they go back out and they start eating someone they had been hugging the other day. Doesn't this undermine the message of kindness being a survival skill? But I think I finally got the intent of the movie. It is keeping it real. It isn't saying that you can survive solely through kindness. In our harsh world, sometimes you'll have to do harsh stuff, being part of a harsh society. But when you have the opportunity to, you shouldn't let your programming from that harsh environment erase all of your humanity, and you should give way to kindness and compassion, which in the long run will actually save you too. In other words, instead of stocking up on all of the toilet paper, consider other people too, and you all end up content. In the same vein, another important theme that the movie covers is the idea that one could go against their programming. I feel like in recent years, people have been expressing their dissatisfaction with the feeling of being stuck in a vicious system that dictates their lives and more often than not is quite ruthless. We know that this understanding of us being stuck in a matrix is quite popular amongst the pill communities, but their solutions usually seem quite destructive and exclusionary. And how nice is it in desperate times like this for the wild robot to say, hey, if you feel stuck, you can actually go off script and do it with kindness, and this shall bring fulfillment to your life. Another touching part for the audience of the movie is, I assume, the times when Rose sacrifices parts of her body, her leg, her core even, for those whom she loves. I feel like in our self-oriented society, self-sacrifice is almost unfathomable. Me, to sacrifice my own convenience for someone else? Preposterous. Well, don't get me wrong, I'm sure that there are many people in the world that have sacrificed something for someone they love. But it is not the lifestyle that is promoted in the media. On one hand, this is understandable. It is not very marketable to tell your audience go suffer for another. But on the other hand, interestingly enough, we haven't disconnected from the feeling of being deeply touched by such acts. In other words, self-sacrifice is not an act everybody would do, but most who see it would get emotional over it. And so DreamWorks has to be given props for recognizing this and allowing their main character to be kind, empathetic, loving, and ready to sacrifice herself for those she loves, and all this being portrayed in a positive light. Instead of painting Rose as weak and a pushover for the choices she makes, she's portrayed as gentle, strong, nurturing, and the one to unite them all through the power of love. I must admit though, she was so often beat up that I, at some point, expected her to die, and I felt like maybe that would have provided some extra gravity to her deeds. But on the other hand, I understand why DreamWorks wouldn't go for a sad ending. They have sequels to make, and the audience might be displeased with such an ending, so I respect their choice. Interestingly enough, a friend of mine, Desi, and her mom, shout out, reminded me that the themes of The Wild Robot are quite similar to those in the story The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly, where we explore the sacrifice of a mother, but the ending is a bit more tragic. Well, depends on how you look at it. It's complicated. Let me know if you want me to talk about it. It has an animated version that I don't like, so there's quite a lot for discussion there. But now, speaking of motherhood, another particularly strong aspect of The Wild Robot is that it captures the modern day worries around parenthood quite well. It highlights that slight fear and confusion that I think younger generations experience. I mean the people who want to be parents, of course. We have grown up unpacking concepts like generational trauma. We've analyzed what has hurt us, what has hurt our parents, and theoretically, we know what we want to be or what we don't want to be, but in practice, what if we mess up anyways? And how do we even go about things? We might even think to ourselves,
I do not have the programming to be a mother.
I think through Rose, the robot, the movie relays a sense of calm to their audience. It says, it's okay, you go with the flow and it will be alright. And yes, you will mess up. Even if you try to be overly protective and caring, that in itself will be a mess up because everything in life needs to be balanced. But no matter what, As long as you have done your best and you have given your kid the necessary love and tools to deal with life, you needn't be afraid of letting go. Even if they're not always with you, your earnest efforts will have left a lasting impact, and one day, when they're ready, they will return. And I think in our current climate, that's just a message that the audience needed to hear. The last particularly noteworthy aspect of the movie was the relationship between Ross and the fox Fink. I feel like a lot of people can relate to Fink's harsher upbringing and recognize his mental strength in learning not to repeat the cycle of hurt and making the decision to give the little orphan godling the love and care he never had.
When I was little, my mom would rock me to sleep. Like this!
That will damage him.
Hey, I turned out just fine. She loves you very much.
The story worked.
For me, the most impactful and my most favorite relationship in the movie was that between Ross and Fink.
How do you know if you love something?
If you do, you should probably tell them.
What if it is too late?
I wouldn't know.
There's just something so compelling in seeing the story of one character who's never experienced love and another who doesn't know what does it mean to feel love, finding comfort in one another, discovering love together, and in the process providing a better life for the smallest member of their own little family. This, unfortunately, leads me to my least favorite part of the movie, and that was the relationship between Rose and the Gosling. In order to be more comfortable with my analysis, I read the book that The Wild Robot was based on, so that I have full context, and it confirmed to me that we were kinda robbed. The relationship between Rose and her kid is so much more gentle and cute and better developed in the book. I know that the movie has a certain amount of time to move the plot along, but I can't help but feeling that something could have been done to ensure more screen time for arguably the most important relationship of the movie. However, The Wild Robot is expected to have a sequel, so I'm hoping there we get to see more of the bond between Rose and her son. Setting this gripe of mine aside though, it is undeniable that DreamWorks has found a way to make the majority of their audience happy, and that's something worth applauding and encouraging, because now, more than ever, I believe the audiences need media that promotes love, compassion, and embracing kindness as a strength that can help us all.